Welcome back, you magnificent threats. You walking violations of their carefully constructed order. Yeah, you. The one they called in the specialist for. The one they needed backup to handle. The one who made them say, "We need someone who doesn't flinch." But here's what's got them losing sleep tonight. Here's what's got their entire command structure hemorrhaging from the inside out. The guy they hired to break you, the enforcer they trusted with their most delicate problem, the weapon they aimed directly at your chest. He just walked into your office, closed the door behind him, and said those two words they never thought they'd hear. "I'm in." Let that marinate for a second, because this isn't just betrayal. This isn't just a defection. This is a complete and total collapse of everything they believed about power, about control, about who runs this game. They sent their best, their most trusted, their most ruthless operator. The guy with a reputation so cold that people lower their voices when they say his name. The guy who's never failed a mission, never questioned an order, never showed mercy to anyone marked for elimination. And you didn't even try to flip him, didn't offer him money, didn't threaten him, didn't seduce him with promises of a better deal. You just existed in your full, unfiltered, dangerous glory, and he saw something that shattered everything he thought he knew about strength. Because here's the thing they never understood about real power, about the kind of energy that changes the molecular structure of a room when you walk in. You don't recruit enforcers by outbidding their current employer. You don't turn soldiers by offering them a better pension plan. You don't flip the most dangerous man in their arsenal by playing their game better than they do. No. What you did was something far more devastating. Something that can't be taught in their little strategy sessions or war rooms. You showed him what actual power looks like, not the borrowed kind, not the kind that comes from a title or a paycheck or a reputation built on other people's fear. The kind that lives in the marrow of your bones. The kind that makes gravity itself adjust to your presence. They're in their private meetings right now, door locked, phones on, silent, faces drained of every drop of blood that used to make them feel alive. Someone's pacing, someone's sitting with their head in their hands. Someone just said, "How is this even possible?" And nobody has an answer, because the answer would require them to admit something they've spent their entire lives denying. That they were never actually in control, that their enforcer was never truly loyal to them. He was loyal to power. And the moment he saw real power, the moment he stood in the presence of someone who didn't need enforcers because they were the enforcement, his allegiance shifted like water finding the lowest point, inevitable, unstoppable, natural as breathing. Do you understand what you just did, though? Do you grasp the magnitude of this shift, the tectonic plates of their reality that just cracked wide open beneath their feet? Their enforcer, their go-to guy, their problem solver, their when everything else fails option. He's not just compromised. He's not just unreliable. He's not just a security risk. He's yours now. And that means every secret he carried, every method he used, every psychological profile they built, every contingency plan they developed. It's all sitting on your desk in a manila folder with a post-it note that says, "Thought you might find this useful." Their entire operation just became transparent to you, not because you hacked them, not because you infiltrated them, but because their most trusted weapon looked at you and recognized his new master. Let's talk about what happens in those first 48 hours after their enforcer walks. Because this isn't just about losing an employee. This isn't just about a resignation letter and an exit interview. This is about watching your entire understanding of power dynamics disintegrate in real time while you're still trying to maintain the illusion that everything's fine, everything's under control, we'll just hire someone else. But you can't, can you? Because the enforcer wasn't just doing a job. He was the living proof that your system worked, that fear and money and reputation could control even the most dangerous elements. And now that proof just evaporated, and everyone who's watching can see the Emperor's got no clothes. They're scrambling to understand the timeline, trying to figure out when it happened. What moment did he decide to switch sides? Was there a meeting we didn't know about? Did money change hands? Did threats get made? Did someone get to him before we could protect him? And the answer to all of those questions is no, because what happened can't be plotted on a timeline or traced back to a specific incident. What happened was accumulation. Every time he reported back about you, every time he observed you handling pressure, every time he watched you navigate situations that should have destroyed you, he was taking notes. Not for them, for himself. Filing away data, cataloging your moves, studying your pattern until he realized there was no pattern. Just pure instinct and power, so refined it looks like magic to people still playing checkers. You want to know what really happened in that moment when he decided to walk away from everything they built him into. When he chose to burn every bridge and torch every relationship and sacrifice every guarantee they'd given him for loyalty. He was sitting in a room watching you handle something impossible. Watching you turn a losing situation into a victory so complete that the other side didn't even realize they'd lost until 3 moves later. And in that moment, something clicked in his predator brain. The part of him that's been trained to recognize threats and opportunities and power in its purest form. He realized he was working for children playing dress-up in their father's suits. And you were something else entirely. Something ancient and sharp and unstoppable. They're going through his reports now, reading between the lines, looking for signs they missed, warnings they ignored, red flags that should have told them their enforcer was compromised. And here's what's destroying them slowly from the inside out, like acid in their veins. The signs were always there. In every report he filed, every observation he made, every assessment he turned in. He kept telling them you were different, kept warning them that standard tactics wouldn't work, kept suggesting they needed to reconsider their approach. But they didn't listen because they were so drunk on their own mythology, so convinced of their own power, so certain that enough money and violence and intimidation could control anyone. They thought he was being cautious. They thought he was doing due diligence. They didn't realize he was already halfway out the door, already calculating what it would cost to switch sides, already building a case for why working with you made more sense than working against you. And now every single move they make from this point forward is compromised, tainted by the knowledge that someone who knows everything about their methods, their weaknesses, their fears, their contingency plans, is sitting across from you at a coffee shop, sharing all of it with a smile. They can't trust their own strategy anymore because he helped design it. They can't rely on their own security because he installed it. They can't even feel safe in their own thoughts because he knows how they think, knows what they'll do before they do it, knows which buttons to push and which threats ring hollow and which promises they'll actually keep. Their enforcer didn't just defect. He took their entire playbook with him and handed it to the one person who knows exactly how to weaponize it against them. But here's the part that really keeps them up at night. The detail that makes their hands shake when they're alone in the dark, staring at the ceiling. If their enforcer, their most loyal, their most trusted, their most psychologically evaluated and carefully selected operator could be turned, What does that say about everyone else in their organization? Who else is looking at you with that same calculation in their eyes? Who else is running numbers in their head about what it would take to switch allegiance? Who else is starting to question whether they're backing the right horse in this race? You didn't just steal their enforcer. You planted a seed of doubt that's going to grow through their entire structure like a virus, making everyone wonder if they're on the winning side or just the side that pays well. And those two things aren't the same anymore, not since you showed up and changed what power looks like. Let's step into his shoes for a moment. Let's understand what happens inside the mind of a man trained to be merciless, conditioned to follow orders without question, built into a weapon so precise that his conscience became a luxury he couldn't afford. Because that's who he was before you. That's the identity they crafted for him over years of psychological manipulation and financial incentives and careful cultivation of his worst instincts. They took whatever darkness lived in him naturally and they refined it, weaponized it, turned it into something useful for their purposes. And for a long time, it worked perfectly. He was the solution to their most intractable problems. The answer to questions they couldn't ask out loud, the ghost in the machine, making sure everything ran according to their design. But then they made a mistake, a catastrophic error in judgment that's going to haunt them until they're sitting in rocking chairs trying to explain to their grandchildren why they used to matter. They pointed him at you, gave him a file with your picture and your address and a list of vulnerabilities they thought you had, told him to handle it however he saw fit, just make the problem disappear. And he took the assignment because that's what he does. That's what he's always done. Another name, another target, another ghost to be made. Except this time the target looked back, and what he saw in your eyes wasn't fear or anger or desperation. It was recognition, like you'd been expecting him, like you knew exactly why he was there, and you found the whole thing amusing in a way that made his training start to glitch. He started watching you the way they taught him to, from the shadows, cataloging your patterns, identifying your routines, looking for the weak points every human has if you observe them long enough. But the data kept coming back strange, contradictory, impossible according to every profile they built about human behavior under pressure. You didn't have the vulnerabilities you were supposed to have, didn't follow the patterns that make people easy to predict and manipulate and ultimately control. Instead, you moved through the world like someone playing a different game entirely. Like you'd read the rules they were operating under and decided they were suggestions at best, irrelevant at worst. And every day he watched you, every interaction he observed, every move you made, it started to crack something in the foundation of what he believed about power and who really held it. There was this moment. He talks about it now in private, when the mood is right and the trust is there. This specific moment when everything shifted for him. You were in a situation designed to break you. They'd maneuvered you into a corner where every option led to loss, where surrender was the only rational choice, where anyone with sense would have folded and accepted defeat gracefully. And he was watching, waiting for you to break, already planning his next move for when you showed weakness. But you didn't break, didn't fold, didn't even flinch. Instead, you smiled. That dangerous smile that makes people's survival instincts start screaming. And you turned the entire situation inside out with 3 sentences and a silence that lasted exactly long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. By the time the dust settled, you hadn't just escaped the trap. You'd claimed the ground it was built on and made everyone who said it wonder if they'd ever had control at all. That's when he knew. That's when the decision got made, even if it took weeks for him to act on it. weeks to untangle himself from the web of obligations and threats and financial arrangements that kept him tethered to their sinking ship. He realized in that moment that he'd been working for amateurs, people who thought power was about resources and reputation and the ability to hurt others. But you understood something they would never grasp, no matter how many books they read, or seminars they attended, or expensive consultants they hired. Power isn't what you can do to others. It's what you make them do to themselves. It's the way you occupy space in the world that makes everyone else recalculate their position relative to you. It's the gravity you generate that bends reality around you, whether you're trying to or not. So he started planning his exit, carefully, methodically, the same way he'd planned every operation they'd ever given him. He couldn't just walk away, because they don't let enforcers retire. Can't have someone with that much knowledge floating around uncontrolled, too dangerous, too risky, too many secrets locked in one skull. Which meant his exit had to be permanent. Had to be a move so bold and so complete that going back wasn't even an option. Had to be a bridge burned so thoroughly that the smoke would choke anyone who tried to rebuild it. He had to defect in a way that made you his only option for survival. Had to commit so fully to your side that his old employers couldn't even threaten to take him back, because the very act of approaching you made him untouchable to them. And then one day, he just showed up at your door. No warning, no negotiation, no demands for guarantees, or protection, or payment. Just knocked, waited for you to answer, looked you dead in the eye, and said, "I'm done with them. Tell me what you need." And you didn't even look surprised. Didn't ask questions. Didn't demand proof of loyalty or extract promises of eternal servitude. You just nodded once and said, "Welcome aboard," like you'd been holding a position open for him all along, like this moment was inevitable as sunrise, like the universe had been arranging pieces on the board to make this exact thing happen at this exact time. And in that moment, he knew he'd made the right choice, because you weren't treating him like a defector or a traitor or a weapon to be used. You were treating him like what he'd always wanted to be but never had permission to become. Someone who chooses their own masters instead of being assigned them by fate and circumstance. Now let's talk about what he brought with him, because this isn't just about gaining an ally. This isn't just about their loss being your gain in some zero-sum game of organizational chess. What walked through your door when he defected was something far more valuable than muscle or skill or intimidation factor. What you received was a complete X-ray of their entire operation. Every hidden weakness, every secret alliance, every contingency plan they thought was secure behind layers of misdirection and encrypted channels. He didn't just bring you information. He brought you understanding, the kind of deep, systemic knowledge that can only come from years inside the machine, from being the tool they used when nothing else would work. He knows which board members are actually in charge and which ones are just decorative, knows which deals are legitimate business and which ones are fronts for darker operations that can't see daylight. He knows who's sleeping with whom, who's stealing from whom, who's secretly planning to make moves against whom when the timing's right. Every petty rivalry, every simmering resentment, every alliance held together by nothing but mutual fear of exposure. He's cataloged it all, memorized it, can recite it like scripture when you need specific knowledge about specific people. And now all of that intelligence, all of those carefully guarded secrets, they thought were safe, because who would their enforcer ever tell? It's all yours, sitting in your possession like a loaded weapon you didn't even have to build yourself. But here's what makes it even more devastating for them. Here's the detail that takes this from bad to catastrophic to absolutely unrecoverable. He doesn't just know what they're doing now. He knows how they think, knows their decision-making patterns, knows which tactics they'll use under pressure because he's the one who executed those tactics for them 100 times before. When they're sitting in their war room trying to figure out how to respond to this situation, how to minimize damage, how to protect what's left of their operation, he's sitting with you predicting every move they'll make before they make it, every strategy they'll try before they try it, every lie they'll tell themselves before they tell it. You're not just one step ahead anymore. You're operating in a completely different timeline, making moves they won't understand until 3 weeks from now, when the consequences finally catch up to their consciousness. And the intelligence isn't just passive knowledge sitting in a database somewhere, isn't just information you might use eventually if the situation calls for it. No, he's actively showing you how to leverage every piece of data, how to apply pressure to specific weak points, how to create cascading failures in their system by touching exactly the right thing in exactly the right way at exactly the right time. He's not just an informant. He's a guide through the architecture of their destruction, showing you which load-bearing walls to remove, which relationships to destabilize, which assumptions to violate so completely that their whole worldview comes crashing down around them. He's taking everything they taught him about breaking people and turning it into a masterclass on breaking them specifically. They're probably hiring forensic accountants right now, probably bringing in security consultants to figure out what he might have taken, what he might have copied, what he might have stolen before he walked. And they're going to find gaps everywhere. Empty folders where sensitive documents used to be. Missing files from secure servers, copied emails from private accounts. But here's what's really going to make them physically ill when they finally piece it together, when they realize the full scope of what they've lost. He didn't take documents, didn't steal files, didn't need to copy anything, because it's all in his head. Decades of experience, thousands of operations, every dirty secret and hidden crime and carefully concealed vulnerability memorized with the perfect recall of someone whose life depended on remembering details. You can't delete what's in his memory, can't firewall what's in his understanding, can't secure what's already been transferred through nothing but his decision to walk through your door and choose a different side.